Well, we are going to go ahead and get going. Welcome again to another MASSP Leader to Leader session. And this one's going to be a little bit different for us because, really we've been spending so much time thinking about things like executive orders and masking and how do we deal with, all the problems that have come our way. But I'm actually excited to be able to bring Patrick O'Connor to work with us today as we talk about, senior college seminar and how do we help address the drop that we're seeing in college applications and getting students kind of on the right road after high school to a successful future. So excited to have Patrick with us today. Please keep in mind today that the chat is literally just that. It's just for chatting. But what we will use the Q&A. So if you kind of scroll at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that we have a Q&A function there, and that is where we will actually answer questions. So please don't pose questions in the chat. The chat's just a little bit of a community builder for us. You'll also note that with that Q&A, I will be monitoring that. I'll pose those questions to Patrick, and then we will be sharing this slide deck, and you'll also get a recording of this session following the presentation. Everybody that registered will receive that. We always kind of throw this disclaimer up there. Just be mindful of the fact that we're recording this and we share it on social media. It's wide open. It's not password protected. So, if you have a particular question or anything, you just want to be mindful of the fact that this is a public recording. So, as referenced in our opening, our guest today is Dr. Patrick O'Connor, the Chief Strategist and CEO for College is Yours. And Patrick, I know that you also are an accomplished author, and your latest book has really been making a splash out there in the school community. So we're happy to have you with us. And for those that don't know Patrick, he has worked with MACAC for many years and has partnered with MASSP on a lot of initiatives and also on some successful legislation. So we're happy to have Patrick with us today.
Wendy, thanks so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Special thanks to Wendy and Brian for the chance to present to you. As Wendy has said, MASSP has been a tremendous partner with MACAC, the Michigan Association for College Admission Counseling, in all kinds of endeavors in support of our efforts to make sure students get all the information they need to make a wise choice for life after high school. And again, just that administrator counselor relationship is so vital. Can't thank Wendy enough for being just so unbelievably supportive and the chance to chat today. And Wendy's comments are certainly certainly right on in terms of the whole notion of the effects that COVID has had on college counseling. So let me just get a second to bring this up. There we go. And there we are. So little bit about me first. I have been a school counselor since 1984. After my first year, I got my driver's license. And I have worked in a mix of schools, including 4 public schools in a variety of areas: Millington, Royal Oak, Northville, and Lake Orion. As I'm a past president of the Michigan Association for College Admission Counseling, and also a past president of the National Association for College Admission Counseling. I had the good fortune of serving as a school counselor ambassador for the U.S. Department of Education. And that role basically was to provide the department with information from the field on current trends for school counselors. You may be interested in noting that when it comes to working with the U.S. Department of Ed, there actually is no Department of School Counselor Assistance in the U.S. Department of Ed, so it was all kind of up to me for a while there. As Wendy mentioned, I have written 6 books. The latest one out is a parent and student guide for college advising, and that book is called College is Yours 3. The book you may be more interested in is the book College Counseling for School Counselors. This is basically a paperback book that gets school counselors in the mode of developing a comprehensive college counseling curriculum. And just want to quickly say, this book has proved to be pretty strong year after year. In part, I don't think most administrators know this, but of the 500 graduate school programs in school counseling in the United States, less than 8% train school counselors in college counseling to any sufficient degree. And so that means a good number of all school counselors begin this job with little or no knowledge about how to do college counseling. And that's this book is aimed to sort of fill that gap, and it's been very well received, particularly by new counselors.
Patrick, I remember you telling me that stat early in meeting you and developing our relationship, and that still blows my mind. And I don't know, in some ways, I guess it shouldn't surprise me, because I think every school administrator on this webinar would probably tell you there's a number of topics that weren't included in our preparation either. But that is just amazing that it wouldn't be a standard part of a school counseling, preparation program.
Yeah, and there are places that sort of do a little here and a little there, but it's a fairly complicated thing, especially if what you want to do is make sure the right student is lined up with the right college, or the right student has looked into college and decided another path is what's best for them. And those decisions not only affect our economy and our well-being as a country and a state, but they do affect the students' well-being. And that's one of the challenges that we face with COVID. Obviously, one of the big challenges counselors have seen, and this isn't a surprise to anybody here today, is an increase in demand for mental health services for our students as they deal with online learning and situations at home, and just the many challenges the pandemic has brought us. It's important, and I don't want to overstate its role, but college counseling does play a role in that, because, one of the things that mental health can do for you is, if you have a goal to work towards and look forward to, then all of a sudden the current situation is usually less burdensome. And planning on what's next after high school is one of the best ways to do that. In terms of giving students some hope and something to build on actively while they're anticipating what comes next in their lives. But even before COVID, we saw a whole lot of students in terms of applying who just don't have time to apply to college. And this is true for our first generation applicants, but it's also true in those schools where 85 to 90% go on to college. They're so busy living great lives that these students don't actually have time to fill out the application. So there's all of that. And then, of course, for our counselors, if they really do want to do a meaningful college counseling curriculum, that's something that takes some time. And time is not something they necessarily have a lot of ever, but particularly in the era of COVID. So again, as Wendy pointed out accurately, college applications are down overall. Of course, you hear some reports about the higher end schools like the Harvards of the world being up, and that's certainly true. But most other, when you get out of the top 25 schools, nearly all are down in enrollment and applications, and that low-income first-gen student, the ones who really need the advice in order to advance their economic opportunities, are down 9.5%. And that's on top of a loss of about 5 to 6% from the year before. So we're seeing a pretty disturbing downward trend. And again, let me emphasize, this is not an issue about making sure every kid goes to college. We did that 10 years ago and it was a disaster. But we do want to make sure students know what the choice is and what opportunities are available to them. And it's also important they understand that college is not always a 4-year living on campus experience. And that's just as important a message to send. So,
Patrick, I was just at a meeting recently where those same statistics were being shared. And one thing that surprised me, because when you say, that applications are down at colleges 9.5%. I heard they're also significantly down at the community college. And that's what surprised me, because I thought, I personally, know quite a few students that were seniors at the start of COVID. They were planning to go away to school. And because of COVID, they decided to just, go online at the local community college, because they would be online either way. So why pay the higher tuition, right? But
Yeah.
so I thought that community, just from anecdotally hearing that from many friends and family members, I thought, community college applications would be up, but overall they're down even at the community college. And they're thinking that's because of their non-traditional students that would have been coming back, from the workforce, or, like looking to improve, and get an associate's degree. Those people aren't going. So the numbers are really down, overall. And when we talk about community college, that can include a lot of certificated programs.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We're talking about one-year programs, certificates, license-based programs at community colleges. Yeah, that's the piece that really caught us off guard, and it's now in its fourth semester of drop. So this is not an issue that's going away. So yeah, lots of surprises with the data. So part of this too, though, is adding to an ongoing problem, which counselors have known about for years but not been able to do much about, which is that students get great advice about college at school and from their counselors. But the research and applying is all done on their own. It's sort of like students get the homework assignment, go home and do it, but they never have a chance to come back to class and ask if they did it right or have somebody check on it. So, the students get a little help, which of course is important, but basically the whole task is theirs to sort out, assuming they have time to do it. Without many resources. So that's been a long-standing problem, and COVID has just made that worse. So earlier this year, a few counselors got together and had a minute to sort of think big. And we said, well, boy, wouldn't it be great if students could research and apply for college and scholarships during the school day? This does a couple of things. First, it creates a space where the work actually gets done. But second, it's also done in the presence of someone who has some expertise in the field, who can help the student, help them make sure they're doing a good college search, make sure they're filling out the application correctly. Many college applications are not all that difficult to do, and in fact, the average college application takes about 25 minutes to complete. I also should step in and add that 2/3 of the colleges in the United States admit 2/3 or more of their applicants. So, you as an administrator may get some information that says, well, I'm not going to apply to college because it's too hard to get in. That's generally not the case for a vast majority of schools. This is the kind of information that students need to receive in person by a caring adult who has some expertise. And it would be great if this whole process could be built into the school day. We realize this is a challenge for several reasons, but we decided to take the challenge on and created a program called Senior College Seminar. The Senior College Seminar is basically a class curriculum, a curriculum to design and implement a college counseling class during the school day. We sat down and said, okay, if we were starting from scratch, if the student knew nothing about applying to college, what would we need to tell them? And we developed 37 lessons on college. As you can see, there are some of the titles, including applying for money, not just for financial aid, but for scholarships as well. And then the understanding that the school counselor's role has changed a little bit. It's no longer just a question of getting them into college and getting them scholarship money if you can, but also making sure you get them ready for transition, because we don't want the students to simply go to college. We want them to go to college and finish. And so we want to make sure we give them everything we can to make sure that freshman year is successful and they build on that knowledge so that they end up getting the degree or certificate of their choice. So that's the whole idea behind Senior College Seminar, and at least some of the topics. Now, in addition to the design, we got some feedback from school counselors who said, well, okay, this thing is going to have to be unbelievably flexible in a whole lot of different ways. And so we're going to talk about those dimensions for just a second. The lessons themselves can be taught in any order. If you pick the lesson at random and decided that's what you were going to teach today, it is not based on knowledge from a previous lesson, and it is completely self-contained. It is a comprehensive lesson with every basic idea the student needs to know. That also means that if you have a lesson that the students are already familiar with, which is the case in many schools, that it can be skipped completely, and you can go on and teach something else. Nearly all the lessons include some kind of student interaction, and that means that it makes for a personalized choice. Those interactions are designed for students to take the information, think about what it means to their interests, and then apply it to their situation in a meaningful way. So so the lessons are really designed to be fairly comprehensive. Now, the other challenge, of course, and the counselors were nearly unanimous in the feedback here, was they said there's no way you can design one class to fit every high school schedule. And I said, well, let's see what we can do. And so we talked to counselors about their schedules, and boy, you know, it's like snowflakes. There are no two that are the same. But the beauty of it is that we have designed the curriculum so that it can be implemented in 3 different time lengths: 10-minute lessons, 20-minute lessons, or beyond 20-minute lessons up to a full class period. So depending on what you're able to do with the schedule at your school, you can do it for any of those and still get a good instruction period with the students. It can be its own class, and in some cases it is being its own class that meets 2, 3, sometimes 5 times a week. But it can also be integrated into an existing class. And we're seeing a lot of schools that are doing that as well. They're adding it as a 3-week unit in their senior health class, or their senior, or if they have a study hall. That's actually ideal. Honestly, if there's a required senior study hall of some kind, students can be instructed there, and then when the instruction's over, they go back to the study hall. Some folks are using it in their advanced placement classes, where the AP teachers are saying, yeah, okay, I can give you some time to do this, and do it on a weekly or twice a week basis. And if all else fails, it can also, of course, be an after school activity that students can participate in, that's run again once the typical school day is over. So our goal was to try and make sure that you as administrators or your school counselors could look at this and say, oh yeah, here's the version that's going to work at our school. And again, tries to offer a lot of flexibility that way. In terms of the instruction, there are sometimes some hesitation about the school counselor devoting themselves to teaching a regular class, which makes sense. They're needed with the students on individual needs. At the same time, what we're discovering is that the instructor typically is not the school counselor. It is more likely a college and career parapro, or if you have a college advisor from MCAN or one of the local colleges, they are teaching the course. And in some cases, it's an interested teacher that simply that didn't quite make load, and so they need something to teach, and so they're being assigned to that. But they're eager to do it because they're interested in what college is all about. So You know, it can of course be a team approach as well, and very often is the case where the school counselor will come in once in a while and offer their insights into a lesson, but the course itself is actually taught by someone else. This may be a little tough for you to see, but I just wanted you to get a feel for what the actual lesson plan looks like. This is, I think this actually ended up being lesson 15, but anyway, this is the college essay lesson plan. And what you'll see about this basically is this was really designed to basically be a script. So the preparation to do this is minimal, if basically non-existent. You in theory could be handed this script 5 minutes before you teach, and as long as the links were attached to your computer, you would be able to teach this course without having to do a single thing to add to it. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, and like good cooks, school counselors are likely to look at these essays and say, or look at these lesson plans and say, yeah, this is great, but I'd like to tell them about this, or I like to tell them about that. It's like, yep, great, go ahead and feel free to add it. But the lesson plans are basically a script format with links to videos that the students engage in and respond to. And as you can see, well, you can't quite see it, but this is the 10-minute lesson. The 20-minute lesson then follows after that. And then the 20-minute lesson plus comes after that. For many of the lesson plans, there's even additional discussion about extra content that could be added for additional sessions if that's something you wanted to do. So that's a quick look at what an actual lesson plan looks like. The Senior College Seminar has been available since August 1st, and it is free. We insisted as we put this together that the last thing we need to do is have money get in the way of helping kids get into college. And so some very serious, highly respected school counselors have committed their energy and expertise to making this work. And they knew there was nothing in it for them. So it's available now and free. The response has been really quite overwhelming. We had over 1,300 downloads in 1 week from schools and counselors all over, in the first week, I should say, from folks all over the world, and from public schools and private schools, but all kinds of schools with different college going rates. So this isn't just a curriculum designed for the high flyers where we're sending 80 to 90% of the students to college already. It's really designed, quite honestly, for the opposite. And so we're delighted to see that there are actual whole school districts that are adopting this and using it for their purpose. Okay, so obviously your administrators' data is important to you, and the question is, does it work? We don't have any data because this is the first year of the program, but I did have a chance to chat with one of Michigan's stellar school counselors, and that's Kathy Longstreet out there in Hastings, who has done great things with their school program, school counseling and college counseling program. And I asked Kathy for her insights on the program. And here's basically what she said. Kathy is using it in addition to other curricular materials she has developed. The course is not being taught by Kathy, it is being taught by an AP teacher. And they have said that they like the depth of each lesson and of the curriculum. Kathy has looked at it and said that the whole thing is extremely comprehensive, and it's easy to add to or to just use as it is. So in terms of its ability to be implemented, we're off to a really good start. When this yields some results, we'll be able to share those, of course. But for right now, if the goal is to get the information out to the students it looks like we're well on our way to achieving that goal. Great. So that's sort of a quick view, and would be happy to take any questions that you have at this point. As you put yours into the Q&A section of the Zoom here, one of the questions we often get is, how as a school administrator can I approach my counselor and see and check their interest in this? Well, a lot of that, of course, has to do with your existing relationship with your counselors. But I think the argument you can make is that the American School Counselor Association says that college advising is an integral part. In fact, it's 1/3 of the job of a school counselor. And most school counselors now are not meeting that ratio because of COVID, quite frankly. So one of the beauties of this system is that if you put a class in there, the students are getting the college counseling curriculum that you have to offer. And so this isn't, boy, do I have time to do this today, or when am I going to offer this lesson? It provides some structure for your school without necessarily tying your time up. Because again, remember, you don't have this, the counselor does not have to teach the course. They simply have to oversee it and make sure that it's being implemented. So this in many ways can ease the burden of the counselor pretty significantly.
I really appreciate everything that you're sharing, because, one of the things that, I always think about is, if a school's doing anything the exact same way they were doing it when I was in high school, I think that it probably needs to be updated or changed. And what you described at the beginning is exactly what my, experience was in high school. It was like, very little exploration, and, just the counselors meeting with us and saying, hey, you need to get your applications in by this date. Here's some general, ideas about things you should consider. And that was it. And then it was like a couple of reminders on the, PA about, the deadlines coming, or that type of thing. But zero follow-up, and zero talk about what a good completed college application looks like. And, although in my household, my mom had put my dad through college, but, neither of them had a lot of preparation or experience with that either. My dad applied to one college, got in, and that was that. And it was many moons ago, So I do think that, being more intentional about this is really important. And when I look at just, anecdotally, a lot of schools do not put an emphasis on this. It's almost like we have to help, get kids the letter of recommendations,
right.
things like that.
Yep.
But really beyond that, and processing them, processing the applications when the kids get them, and attaching, making sure the transcript goes and all of that type of stuff. But really beyond that, I think this whole idea of a curriculum and walking kids through it, when we really look at it through an equity lens, it's essential. Especially for your first time college goers. If you're a first gen college student, there is no one at home that's really probably knowledgeable to help you and really make sure that this gets done.
Right. Exactly, Wendy. And that's all those points are the reasons why we see that this is sort of a wave of the future and being able to do it and during the school day. I really liked what you said about the fact that things haven't changed all that much and need to, because, one of the things that we see is that of all the students who start a 4-year program, only about 60% end up getting a degree. And we believe that one of the reasons for that is because they don't really sit down and think about the qualities of the school. And that's, again, something this course can offer students the time to stop and reflect before they move forward.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And, really helping kids to understand. And I know that, some of the programs that students are using, or as school districts like career cruising and such, are aimed to help kids, kind of think about those things. But I don't, how we a lot of times, unfortunately, are meeting that mandate, taking kids in a computer lab, once or twice a year for 30 minutes to get into their career cruising, basically meet the legislative requirement, but not truly do a search and be, thoughtful about that process. So I really appreciate, your work and the other counselors that contributed to this, because I definitely think there's a need out there, and to have something that's available free of charge, I think is really, really amazing. And I also appreciate the fact, because I know, it's always a little bit of a tenuous piece, because we're all so short on counselors, and they are so stretched in their roles. So the fact that you've made this plug and play, that it could be with, paraprofessional support, like you mentioned, maybe an MCAN college advisor, or maybe an English teacher could do this, really any teacher. But I really like that idea. The one thing that I just hope people are mindful of is, once again, that this is an equity piece, and that running it, with AP students and with just those that maybe show the potential, you're really missing, really not making it an inclusive process, because of course the students who need us the most are not the AP kids, to complete their application. Not that they don't need help and support, but I think we just really have to be mindful of the broader, lens of making sure that the college application process is, it's a funnel, not a filter, and that we're bringing more kids into that process.
Yep. Well put, Wendy. Very, very well put. Yeah.
Well, it's a soapbox issue for me. Having been a teacher, in a high poverty area, and really, as when I was a high school coach, I had a group of girls that I, definitely took under my wing, and something like this would have even been helpful to me, because I was doing these things with them. And I'm sure missing some things, because I had no training or background either. So I think something like this could be like really broadly beneficial, in many avenues, to be able to get this out there. So I appreciate you sharing it. I don't see any other questions or raised hands on our webinar, but I appreciate all the information that you shared, Patrick. We have this recorded. Hopefully we can get this out there broadly, and to get people to take a good look at it. But I'd like to, have the ability to recall you in the future.
Oh yeah. No,
if other things come up.
Yeah. No, if there's something that I love to do besides work with kids about college, it's talk to educators about college, because it's really everybody's job to make sure our students go off to what's next with poise and skill and confidence. So again, Wendy, I'm most indebted for the chance to do this today. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you. And as we're wrapping up here, MASSP members, just want to remind you that we do have a Title IX training that's coming up on September 29th. This one is not a leader to leader. We are charging for this one, just because we have a presenter from Troon Law that we will be able to pay for providing this information. It's a 2-hour Title IX refresher. So all of the different reporting responsibilities that administrators have in terms of conducting a Title IX investigation and, completing all the required paperwork. So our friends from Troon Law will be facilitating that, making sure that we don't forget anything, because certainly that's a pretty significant responsibility. So that one's only $50, September 29th from 9 to 11. We hope we see all of you at that time. Thanks again to our guest, Patrick O'Connor. We really appreciate you, and have a great rest of your day, building administrators.